As Chicago goes, and as Cook County goes, so goes Illinois, and so goes so much of the Midwest and around the country. Happy to have Justice Eileen O'Neill Burke in studio, 30-year prosecutor, criminal defense attorney, judge in Cook County, assistant state's attorney for, I think, 10 years, expert in civil court procedure, written, I think, if I saw the notes and remember them correctly, I think 800 or more than 800 different decisions, 1,600 cases, like 800 different decisions. In other words, you've been quite busy.
I have been busy. That's true, Steve.
Nice to have you here.
Nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate your candidacy. We need more committed people in the race so we can make sure we fix some of the wrongs and get things back in order. One of the things you have to do as state's attorney is be able to navigate, in my world, at least 3 platforms. One is a courtroom. You have to be able to deal with judges. Obviously, you know that world. You have to be able to deal with attorneys, you know, that world. But the third piece of that is the police.
Yes.
So explain to me how your experience will serve you in dealing with the police.
So I have been on every single side in the justice system. I've been a state's attorney. I've been a defense attorney. I was a trial court judge. And for the last 7 years, I sat on the appellate court. That's what's needed right now. No one has any faith in the justice system. Ask any victim, ask any witness, ask any defendant if they think our justice system is working just fine right now, and they will tell you it is not. So I could have stayed on the appellate court and kept clucking about how bad it was, or I could try to do something about it. So I made that difficult decision to step down from possibly the greatest job in the world in July in order to take this on. And I have to tell you that I'm running for every single mom in this city who's worried about their kids going out at night. I'm running for every single person who's afraid to take the CTA. You know, Steve, 5 years ago, I never heard anyone say they were afraid to come downtown.
I listen, I believe you, and I echo it, and I hear it from friends.
Yes, and I hear it every day.
And you know, the Trumpism of America with painting Chicago in a particular light hasn't helped, but it's not all his fault.
No.
It's the media that has made this dramatically worse, and it's the image of Chicago, even here in the suburbs. While not being completely accurate, there is a danger downtown that exists that didn't exist before.
That's true. And Chicago is the economic engine, not
Gotta
just for Cook
be.
County, but for the entire state. If we have businesses that are having trouble recruiting into Chicago, if we have businesses that people don't want to come downtown and frequent, that's going to impact everyone in Cook County.
Yeah, so while recognizing that every big city is going to have crime, you have to have a belief that the system is such that in a civil society, bad guys will be caught, put away, and serve their time as the justice system sees fit.
One of the biggest complaints I hear is that police are doing their job. They're arresting who needs to be arrested, but then the judges are letting them out. You know, you hear the old adage, letting them out the next day or before the paperwork is even finished. How will you keep the bad guys in jail?
So there's been a seismic change in our pretrial detention with the Safety Act. So let's talk about that for a little bit. The Safety Act says we're no longer going to say how much money can you post for bond. The criterion is going to be, are you a danger to the community or are you not? And I don't think anybody has a beef with that. I think everybody thinks, okay, that should be where the criterion is. Not how much money you have, but are you a danger or are you not? But the change that has happened is now the state's attorney is the gatekeeper for pretrial detention. Before, judges had the ability to set bond. The judge, you know, would set a higher bond if it was murder. We've all seen that, $1 million bond on a murder, or however the seriousness of the offense was, the higher the bond would be. I was head of the Illinois Judges Association for the last year, and I can tell you judges do not like it when you take away their discretion. But now judges have no discretion to detain someone unless the state's attorney files a petition to detain. If the state's attorney does not file that petition to detain, it doesn't matter if somebody is a serial killer or El Chapo. If that petition is not filed, judges have no discretion to detain and the defendant has to be released. So it has become exponentially more important who the state's attorney is and that they know what they're doing.
You also need a fully staffed office. You need organization at levels that don't exist now.
So let's talk about those courtrooms and let's talk about the experienced prosecutors that are leaving because they feel unsupported. The morale is low. How do you change that? How do you get them back?
So nobody ever went to I became a state's attorney in 1991. And at that time, there were 2,300 applications for 50 spots. It was a highly coveted job, and nobody ever went there for the money. What you went to the state's attorney's office for was the experience and the training. That doesn't exist anymore. That is just not happening because they are so overstretched that supervisors are handling their own dockets.
Well, why do you make it a job you want then?
I've already started recruiting other retired judges saying, come back with me. Let's form an education unit. So at each and every level of the state's attorney's office, we're going to cover what does the Constitution require? What does the case law say? What are the courtroom skills that are necessary for you to be effective at your job? And then we're going to go out and we're going to sell the state's attorney's office as getting a master's degree in trial work. We are going to set the gold standard for prosecution training in the entire country. We are going to have the entire country looking to us to what are they doing differently because we're going to get our crime rates down.
You know, it's not your job to make sure that there's an appropriately staffed police department, but it certainly would help. In my world, it's not appropriately staffed, and part of the reason is a giant morale problem amongst the police as well, and it can break down to a simple crime like shoplifting, which is rampant now.
Mm-hmm. Well,
the state's attorney changed the level of a felony from $300 to $1,000 with multiple occurrences having to exist before it could rise to a felony, and people would be taken in. If I know there's nothing you're going to do to me,
Right.
I walk into any store on Michigan Avenue, and I steal $500 worth of stuff, and I'm out on a ticket.
Right.
Why would that stop? In other words, when that decision was made, okay, I don't like it, but let's look at it. The world's a different place now. We have empirical evidence it was a terrible idea. Would you change it back?
Absolutely. I took an oath as a judge, as an appellate court justice, and I would take the same oath as state's attorney to enforce the law. The law says the felony threshold is $300. So for me to come in as a state's attorney and say, I'm going to decide whatever the law is, that's not appropriate.
Right.
What's appropriate is to say we have a wide variety of options available to us. If someone has no retail theft background and this is their first offense, we can give them theft school so they complete it and then they don't get arrested again. And then the case is gone. It's not on their record. And then we can gradate up in penalties up to and including jail time if necessary. It doesn't mean you just don't prosecute. Not prosecuting crime doesn't deter crime. It encourages crime. And I think we've seen the evidence of that.
Yeah, when we come back, here's a tease for you. Young broadcasters, pay attention. When we come back, the important question I'd love for you to answer in just a moment is, in your job as state's attorney, should you win, what is the greatest priority? And don't answer till we come back. That's you become part of the tease here through the break. Is it more important to have criminal justice reform or to serve the issue of crime and punishment? And how do the victims play into that? So which is more important? When we come back, you remember Clayton Harris's answer on this.
That's right.
Was it's 50-50. You got to be able to do both. We'll see what Justice Burke says in a moment. Justice Eileen O'Neill Burke wants to be state's attorney. Andrea's got a follow-up on the police question, but I want you to come back here with the answer to the question I asked before the break, and that is, I mean, certainly social justice reform is something that you need to be concerned with in the job, but priority-wise, social justice reform versus crime and punishment, where does it work in your world as state's attorney?
Well, I think it's easy to go back to what the mission of the state's attorney's office is. The mission of the state's attorney's office is to prosecute crimes and represent victims in court. And that will be our sole focus and mission is representing victims. And we need to dispel this perception that no one cares about the victims in these cases, that no one cares what happens and that people can there's no consequences to actions. That's wrong. Even if we go back to the retail theft person, what does that do to the people who are working there?
100%.
When people walk in...
They're also victims.
Right. They are also victims here. And we need to be cognizant of that. And it is not the role of the state's attorney to represent the defendants. That's the role of the public defender and private attorneys. And the role of the state's attorney has been expanded to cover everyone, and that is not the role. The role is to represent the victim.
So know your priorities.
Completely agree. We were talking off the air, too, about police morale. And at the ground level, at the foundation, crime is on the ground. Someone calls 911, whether you're in Englewood or Edison Park. They're going to call 911. The police get there, and you feel that is really the root of the problem, where to start when it comes to police morale?
Well, the attrition that we're seeing in the state's attorney's office, we're seeing in the police department, and I think they're directly related. Every single officer I'm talking to all over the city is telling me the city is awash in guns. And not just a regular gun, but a gun with a bump stock. And an officer corrected me yesterday, and he said it's called a Glock slide. But I think the colloquial term is a bump stock. So guns have bump stocks and extended magazines every single time. So officers, every time they effectuate an arrest, are literally risking their lives to make that arrest. And the next day they see the person out on the street again. That's demoralizing. And of course, an officer would start to think, what am I risking my life for every single day? And we saw an officer being shot on State and Walton 2 days ago. And that offender had 2 guns on him, one with a bump stock and an extended magazine. We are seeing it all over the city.
It's outrageous.
But we have a new tool, and the tool is the assault weapons ban. The assault weapons ban elevates the class of offense, and it makes it much easier for us to ask for detention and the maximum penalty.
That's a key because people always go, well, bad guys are going to get guns no matter what. If you have the ability to keep someone in jail who you have on a charge, that's a huge difference in the world we're living in right now. I'll give you a quick story and a perfect example. I served jury duty a couple of times, and the last time I served, there was a guy who ran through one of the housing complexes, and he dropped a gun. He goes through, and the charge in particular was strong-arm robbery. It wasn't the end of the world. But we were hung as a jury, and they kept saying, go back, go back, go back. We didn't know until after the trial was complete that this guy had killed 2 people and gotten off both times. And this gun charge that he had, because he had a gun on him and he dropped the gun, they were able to send him away for 20 years. These are the kind of things that you need to nuance in the state's attorney's office to make sure the most dangerous people are off the streets.
That's true. And I will tell you that if we start asking for detention and the maximum penalty, it will get out there very quickly. I did criminal defense for 8 years, and sometimes the criminals would know the law better than I did. They would tell me, oh, no, you don't want to do that because that's a 5-year enhancement. And I'd be like, it is? And they would say, yes. And then, so they will know quickly if we are asking for detention and maximum penalty.
Right. How about the problem of juveniles and carjackings? And we can take them as 2 separate, or they go hand in hand, because a lot of these crimes are committed by juveniles. And as you said, Judge, they're out the next day. How do you address both of those issues, or do they go hand in hand?
So we are seeing a huge influx of commission of armed robberies and carjackings by juveniles. So you are in juvenile court, which is governed by the Juvenile Court Act and not the criminal code, until you are 18. There are only 2 crimes where you can be transferred to the adult system: murder and aggravated sexual assault. Other than that, until you are 18, you are in juvenile court under the juvenile code. So the Juvenile Court Act makes it very difficult to detain juveniles. It is virtually impossible to detain juveniles. So I have 4 children, and I can tell you right now, children do not do well with unstructured time. We just came out of 2 years of unstructured time. So kids do what kids do. They get in trouble. So now it's time to give them structure. So what I want to do is I want to front load resources. So we have someone checking them in at school at 8:30, checking on them at noon, making sure they went to class, checking them out at 3:30. And then the vast majority of juveniles get arrested between 3:30 and 10 o'clock at night. So from 3:30 to 10 o'clock at night is when we're going to keep them busy. They are either going to go to a learning enrichment program, they're going to go to a job training program, or I want to work with the trades and get an apprenticeship program until 10 o'clock at night. And then they're going to be tired because they're getting checked in at 8:30 in the morning. And then if we give them all this structure and accountability and they're still committing crimes, then we have a much better argument to seek detention.
Well, and that's why, we support Pastor Corey Brooks around here and the good stuff he's doing on the West Side. And he needs more political support and judicial support as well, because he's trying to do exactly what you're talking about. Occupy kids and show them the fork in the road doesn't have to mean the wrong direction. So,
exactly.
Jane, you were going to?
Well, there's so many things to tackle. So let's say this. You get the message out. People vote. You're the new state's attorney. You go to the office first day. You got all the Kim Foxx's policies in place. What is the first thing you do? Because it seems like there's a lot to tackle.
The first thing I did, if I won the Democratic primary, is I would put a transition team in place, and we are going to do a top-to-bottom review of every single division, every single position, and we are going to figure out what's necessary and how to restructure this. We're going to have to do triage. They're woefully understaffed right now. And the triage is going to entail getting paralegals in. Paralegals can help with the discovery backlog and get cases moving. We've all read about defendants sitting in custody for 5 years because nobody's complied with discovery. Or if they have, nobody's available to try the case. So we're going to have to do some triage immediately. But we are going to be doing outreach to every single law school, every single paralegal school there is, and we're going to get that office fully staffed. And that's going to be the first step back.
As you know, there's skepticism related to Fox's record. Everything she did was not wrong, but certainly everything she did was not right. There's tons of things you'll need to tackle if you win. Cookie, text her, all the talk's fine and well, but show me where detaining and incarcerating those who are already violating the laws that are on the books works. I'm from a police family, and all we've seen is too much talk and not enough action. How will this be different?
Well, it'll be different because we are going to have people who have a history of knowledge, integrity, ethics. When I bring back the retired judges to start in our education and training program, it's going to be different because we are going to set the standard for how prosecutors are trained. It's going to be different because we are going to have structure, training, and criterion for each and every level of the state's
Well, I mean, I think
office.
that's going to be key for you if you win this, because you're going to have to be able to leverage the network you have of experience and all the people you know to come around you, because, man, this is not a one-person job. You know that better than anybody.
No, that sure is. And that was my husband's question. Why do you want to do this?
Leave the judgeship. I know we're up against the clock, but electronic monitoring, that's another system that needs tweaking as well.
So there are 140 people currently charged with murder and attempt murder on electronic monitoring. That is absolutely egregious. Somebody who is charged with murder or attempt murder, if they are out, you will never get a witness to come forward and testify in those cases. And so that could be one of the explanations for the terrible clearance rate on murders. Inglewood has a 10% murder clearance rate. That means 9 out of 10 people are getting away with murder.
Literally.
Jeez.
It's not acceptable.
And, of course, next time we talk, and I hope you'll come back,
I will.
Yes.
because we appreciate you stepping up. As you also may know, there's too many people who either want elected positions or are in those who don't have the guts to face questions. So I appreciate you being here.
I love questions.
Next time we talk, I'd also like to talk about taking on tough guys. I know you took action against the Catholic Church. That's a big one to take on in this town, so we'll take that up next time. But you can find out about that and other things on your website, and information about you where?
JusticeForCookCounty.com.
JusticeForCookCounty.com. Again, good luck to you. Stay healthy.
Thank you.
And when your kids look at you and go, when are you coming home? Go as soon as possible.
All right. Thanks, Judge.
Thank you all.
Justice
Thank
Eileen
you, Judge.
O'Neill Burke, JusticeForCookCounty.com. And Clayton Harris, if you want to hear that podcast, that's up. And you can do that. Go to WLSAM.com or subscribe. You get all the podcasts as well.